Hey there, Chapter 13, Chapter 14. This one is on page 151, in which Sam takes charge. Don't forget, today is sponsored by Stroman. My husband bought this for me many years ago before we got married when he worked there. So, drink it if you got it. All right, I want you to know this is the third time I've had to try this. For some reason, the camera keeps going off on me, so we'll see if we can do it again. Third time. I already know the storyline now. Okay, in which Sam takes charge, page 151. Sam was at his lean-to, his elbows propped on his knees, his binocs pinned on the green pickup. He had watched the two U.S. Fish and Wildlife Servicemen rescue the peregrine eyases of the Delhi Bridge. He was grateful to them. The bridge painting was becoming intolerable. Sam studied them closely. The dark-haired man seemed familiar, but he didn't know any Fish and Wildlife Service people. He turned his glasses on Frightful. She zoomed out of nowhere and landed on the scrape. Ding! Turned the page, 152. Why wasn't she following the feds and her eyases? She was not even looking in their direction. And then he saw why. An eyas appeared and nestled into her warm breast feathers. What the heck, Sam said loudly. She's feeding. He put down his glasses and whistled him come here notes to Frightful. Frightful turned her head but did not answer. She was mothering Oxy and calling a worried cack to 426. He came down from a height where no human could see him, landed on the garter, and took off again. The man in the cherry picker had so terrified him he could not force himself to sit on the bridge. He caught a wind and was sped up the mountain. He came to rest on a large maple near Sam's lean-to and flattened his feathers to his body. His eye pupils were pinpoints of fear. Cack, 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 426 yelled a distress cry over and over. Sam lowered his glasses to the bridge span. The men on the paint crew were swinging the work platforms under the fifth web, getting ready to paint the seemingly empty area. Down on Elm Street, Molly, Jose, and Leon Longbridge came on the run. They joined Joe Cassini and Dan Martin at the cherry picker. Good news, Joe said. The feds moved the little birds. No, they didn't, Leon said. They stole them. Those men were not from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I checked on them when Huey called me, and they weren't from the state either. Well, who were they then? Poachers. A special kind of poacher, said Leon. They'll raise the eyases and sell them for tens of thousands of dollars. Did you get their license plate number? Molly asked Joe hopefully. No, he answered. Never occurred to me they weren't legit, but they should be easy to find. They were in an old green Chevy pickup with an official insignia on the door. Ding! Turned the page, 154. What do we do? Jose asked, tugging Leon Longbridge's sleeve. I've already called the police, he said, and also John Wood. He suspects some poachers are hiding out in a cabin on White Man Mountain. Maybe we should begin there. Can we come? Molly asked, clapping her hands. No, Leon said forcefully. Those guys are dangerous. Now run along to school. You're late. When Leon went back to his office, Joe Cassini and Dan Martin looked up at the intricately webbed bridge that had been a home for the peregrines. Its crisscross grid was a huge silver tapestry in the gray spring light. Well, Dan, Joe said, the falcons are gone. We'll sandblast the area. Nothing to stop us from painting now. Except that thunderstorm hanging over the mountains, Dan Martin answered. I'm going to sit this one out. I don't want to be caught in a thunderstorm on an iron bridge. You do understand this, right? That iron bridges, they conduct electricity. Lightning loves to zap that kind of a metal. So you don't want to be in a bridge when that happens. He closed his paint bucket and returned it to the supply truck. Joe Cassini was checking the sanding job on the bridge railing when the first peal of thunder rumbled. He called the men down from the work platforms and sent them to the safety of their cars. In his own car, he took out a thermos of coffee, drank several gulps, then leaned back and closed his eyes. Well, he drank several gulps. Sounds like a plan to me. Good stuff. How was I to know wildlife officials from poachers? He asked himself. Well, I hope they get caught. I got real fond of those birds. Lightning flashed like fireworks. Oxy pressed up against Frightful and crawled deeper into her feathers. Both sat still and waited. The falling air pressure foretold a severe storm. Sam felt the warning too, but he planned to take advantage of it. He walked down the mountainside to the road and sat under a large rhododendron bush. The clouds rolled over Delhi in blue-black boils, their bottoms illuminated by white flashes. A few large raindrops splattered down onto the rhododendron leaves, then many. A fork of lightning opened a cloud. It closed with a thunderous boom. Water spilled down in sheets. When he could no longer see Joe Cassini's car for the rain, Sam crawled out from under the bush and ran to the bowed arch. Barefoot, using his hands and feet, he went up to it. The rain poured off his hair and down his face. Lightning danced over the bridge in town. The thunder became a continuous boom. When he got to where the bow met the fifth vertical web, Sam whistled 3 notes. There was no response. Dropping to the horizontal girder, he flattened out on his belly. Frightful, he whispered. Are you there? The rain deluged, flooding the girder and running into the airy. Ding, turned the page, 156. Cree, gree, gree, caree. Hey, Frightful, he said. I'm going to take the little falcon to her home. Follow me. He slipped his hand under her. She did not move. Lift up. Psst, psst. I love you. It's all right. Sam wormed forward until his hand closed over a small, warm body. Frightful cacked and flew into the rain. He put Oxy inside his shirt against his chest, then tied a leather thong around his waist so that she wouldn't fall out. He backed down the bow. A jagged white lightning bolt hit the steeple of the church near the courthouse. A boom of thunder as loud as a cannonade shook the bridge. Too close, said Sam. Let's get off this thing. He jumped to the ground, glancing back to see if anyone had noticed him. Not much chance. The rain was falling so hard that he could barely see the cherry picker in the middle of the span. Picking up his moccasins, he crossed the road and went up the mountain. He did not stop at his bivouac. I don't know what that word says, honestly. Bivouac? Bivouac? I have to look it up. Moving quickly, he took a deer trail to the long path that led up the one mountain to the one tree. He hurried. Little falcons needed constant food. From time to time, he glanced up through the rain, hoping to see Frightful above them. The deluge was too heavy to see anything beyond gray streaks of water. She'll know where I'm going, he said, and ran up on the trail. When he stepped into the ancient hemlock, Oxy was still warm and dry inside his shirt. He put her on the floor. Oxy sat back on her heels and screamed without let-up while he changed into the new suit he had made from the hide of a road-killed deer. He lit a fire and sat on his bed. The eyes screamed on. Your mom, he said softly, will find you as soon as the storm stops. This is her very first home. Oxy cried louder, opening her beak to be fed. Outside, the rain kept falling. Cack, 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 the peregrine worried call. Sam grinned and poked his head out of the deerskin door, expecting to see Frightful. He saw only rain bending the branches of the hemlocks and running in rivulets down their trunks. Where are you, Frightful, he called. Your eyes is very hungry. I don't want to feed her. She will imprint on me and think she's a person. Then she will never mate with her kind. Cack, cack, cack. The frightened peregrine falcon called again. Let it be Frightful, Sam said, squinting up through the big hemlock, limbs at an erect, broad-shouldered bird near the top. He whistled. The bird shook off the rain. Ding, turned the page, 158. Too small to be Frightful, Sam mused. It's her mate. But he's not much use. He won't feed the eyes at this stage of the game. She's too old. We've got to find Frightful. The eyes screamed so hard that Sam's ear rang. He found Frightful's old hood and deftly put it over Oxy's head. She immediately stopped screaming. Dashing out through the rain, Sam entered the mill house and picked up a box he had made with boards Bando had cut for his furniture and discarded. The box had 5 sides. If the box that Leon Longbridge had used was a model, Sam's needed one more thing. He picked up a slat of wood about 3 inches wide and bored holes in it. Next, he bored holes at the edge of the box opening. With his penknife, he whittled sticks to make pegs and fastened the board to the box with them. The board was just high enough to prevent the eyes from falling out. He had a home for Frightful and her baby. When he was done, the rain stopped, and the thunder rumbled down the valley. Sam returned to the little falcon and took off her hood. She screamed for food. Hoping she was hungry enough to eat on her own, Sam took a deer mouse out of the pocket of the rain-drenched suit. I trapped this at the lean-to, he said to Oxy. A guy never knows when he'll need a mouse in his life. Oxy fluttered her fuzzy white wings and screamed louder. She was frantic and close to the first stage of starvation. You've got to eat this by yourself, Sam said, and threw the mouse on the ground. She did not even look at it, just up at him, and screamed continually. Sam put the hood back on her head and went outside. He strapped the nest box to his back and, gripping the lowest limb of the hemlock, swung hand over hand to the tree trunk. Gack, gack, gack! Sam looked up. 426 flew out of the hemlock, circled, and disappeared. That is Frightful's mate, he said. I recognized the broad band on the tip of his tail. He whistled for Frightful, but she still did not appear, and he climbed on up, limb by limb. Where is she? He asked himself. She should have been right above me, even in the rain. Did I put too much faith in our friendship? I thought she knew I was taking her eyes to our tree. I was so sure she would follow me. I was wrong. Sam stopped where two limbs made a secure brace for the box and tied it to the trunk and both limbs. He tested it several times for stability, then climbed down. If this doesn't work, he said aloud, I'll have to feed the little eyes. That will change her whole life. I also might be jailed for harboring an endangered species. Ding! Page 160. Continuing in a couple seconds. Page 160, in which Sam battles bird instincts. Frightful had completely panicked when Sam reached under her in the thunderous storm. She flew into the drenching rain and gained altitude, ready to strike him with all the force on her speeding body. A powerful gust of wind caught her wings and swept her upriver. Its downdraft pulled her toward the water. She fought wind and rain to get back to the bridge, but the storm was the master. She gave up and dropped into a calm eddy of air behind a bank of willows. Cree, 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 she called from a dead stub. Lightning burned streaks in the sky and thunder cannonaded. Cree, she called once more, then pulled her head down between her shoulders and let the rain run off her body. Through the storm, she listened for 426. She had last seen him swooping down on the man in the cherry picker. Cree! There was no answer from 426. She waited in the willow tree until her fears subsided. It was short-lived. In moments, she was quietly listening to the rain slap the leaves around her. After a long time, the deluge stopped. In less than 2 seconds, Frightful was back on the horizontal girder of the bridge. She walked to the wet scrape, turning under her talons so as not to injure the young. Cree! She called. No eyases answered, nor did 426. Oh, poor Frightful. At recess, Molly and Jose came splashing through the big puddles to the bridge. They stood before it, looking up at the webs in the graceful bow. The bridge has changed, Molly said. It's dead. Yeah, said Jose. No peregrines. Not even a coat of red paint can make it fun again. The two walked along the bank and watched frogs jump into the river until the bell rang at the end of recess. They started back. Leon Longbridge pulled up beside them. Listen to this, he said, waving a paper. It's from the governor. Read it, please, said Jose. It's addressed to me and the students of Delhi Middle School, he began. Thank you for your many well-written letters concerning the peregrines at Delhi Bridge. I am pleased to inform you that I share your concern. Work will stop on the bridge on Route 28 until the young peregrine falcons are fledged. Although the bridge repair is urgent, our endangered species, ding, turn to page 162, once gone cannot be brought back. Therefore, I have told the head of the Transportation Department of the State of New York to work on Bridge 92 at Gilboa until the little family is on wing. My administration actively protects the environment of New York State, and I am happy you are in favor of this policy. Sincerely, Governor George Markey. Too late, Molly whispered, tears in her eyes. For lack of understanding, Leon Longbridge said, we've lost 3 beautiful eyases. Can I read the letter? Molly asked. I made you a copy, Leon said, handing her a paper. And one for you, Jose. After rereading the letter 3 times, Jose folded it and put it in his pocket. We've got to catch the poachers, he said. We've got to get the babies back. He turned hopelessly to Leon Longbridge. How can we do that? The state troopers are looking for them right now, Leon said, and the Department of Motor Vehicles is checking the ownership of all the Chevy pickups. So far, nothing. Molly put the letter in her book and without another word walked back to school. Jose walked silently behind her. Frightful stared into her empty scrape. Restless and upset, she flew to the park, caught a pigeon, and carried it to the cupola of the courthouse. She ate and watched for 426. When she was comfortably full, she carried the remains back to the scrape and tore off an eyas bite. There were no open beaks to fill. She peered at the girder, waiting for the little falcons to thrust up their heads. They did not. She swallowed the food. Frightful did not leave the eyrie. Her mothering instincts were wrong. She still felt the presence of her chicks, but as the hours passed and her eyases did not appear, the feeling began to fade. Without her young to inspire her, it would not take many days for the nurturing instinct to die. In the early afternoon, Frightful left the bridge and flew over the town, the river, the mountains in wider and wider circles. Eventually, she flew over 426, perched on the one hemlock on the one mountain. In seconds, she was beside him. A movement below caught her eye. She tipped her head. Sam had stepped out of the tree. "Cree, cree, cree, cree," she called. "Frightful," he cried joyfully. "Where are you? I hear you." He whistled and stepped back. "Oh, Frightful," he said when he saw her. "I have your little eyes. She's right here. Follow me." Sam put Oxy into his soft backpack, shouldered it, and ding, page 164, started climbing. 426 cried out the peregrine alarm and sped off. Frightful stayed. When Sam reached the nest box, she was only 10 feet above him. He held up the eyes. "Here she is. You must feed her. She's hungry." He placed the downy chick in the box and hurriedly climbed to the ground. Frightful watched him. Sam watched her. There were no hunger cries from Oxy. She was too perplexed by the box. She sat still, waiting for her mother. Oxy could not see Frightful from inside the enclosure, and Frightful could not see Oxy from where she was sitting. She must hear the eyes call to locate her. Sam paced and watched from below. The little bird needed food and needed it right away. A few hours without eating at this time of Oxy's life would put hunger streaks in her feathers. Weakened, they would break when she was old enough to fly. Sam got his falconer's lure from the hemlock house. It was a chunk of deer hide with pheasant feathers tied to it. He spun it around his head in a long line. In action, the lure looked like a bird. Food. Frightful had once been so well trained she came to the lure even when she was not hungry, but that was long ago. She cocked her head and looked with interest at the whirling lure. Sam whistled. She sat. Finally, Sam tied the mouse to it and swung it again. Frightful saw the mouse. She dropped swiftly, hit it, and went with it to the ground. Sam picked her up. "Frightful gal," he said, blowing out his breath in relief. "You got a job to do. You've got a job to do. The eyes is in that box in the tree. She's in trouble. She needs you." Frightful did not understand the words, but she did understand Sam's worried mood. She sat on his hand and looked at him. "I'm going to climb the tree with you," he said. "No, you'll fly if I do that. I better dress you first." Sam carried her into the hemlock tree. "Cree!" she called, recognizing the cozy interior of the one tree and the one mountain. She roused and sat contently. Sam cut 2 thin pieces of deer hide, made 3 holes in each, and tucked ends inside holes. He fastened jesses to her legs with the falconer's knot, the knot that never binds. Frightful felt the jesses go taut as Sam gripped them between his thumb and forefinger. It was a familiar feeling. She wiped her beak on his fist and sat erect. He walked outside. "No one had better see us now," he said with a chuckle. "I'd be hauled off to jail for practicing falconry without a license." Frightful fluffed. Sam started climbing. Ding, turned the page, 166. His maneuvers around limbs were jerky, and Frightful thrust out her wings to keep her balance. Twice she tried to fly. They finally reached the box. Sam placed her in it. "Psee!" called Oxy. Frightful heard the feeble cry of her chick. In her eagerness to reach her, she struck the box hard with her wings. The hollow sound was terrifying. She took off. "Oh, no," Sam gasped. "You're wearing jesses. I'm in real trouble if anyone sees you." Then he added, "But I don't care. You know where the eyes is. You'll come back and feed her." Frightful screamed as she flew around the mountaintop in wider and wider circles. She calmed down, remembered the hunger cry of her eyes, and dove gracefully towards the tree. Suddenly, a red-tailed hawk grabbed Frightful's jesses, mistaking them for food. He pulled her downward, then let go before they both fell into the trees. Catching herself on her acrobatic wings, Frightful skimmed up through and over the trees. She flew down the mountain like a hurtled rock and alighted on the Delhi Bridge. Panting, she gazed at the river until she was calm. The painters were back at work. A car screeched to a stop, and the driver pinned his binoculars on Frightful. "I'll be darned," said Perry Knowlton, a falconer. He picked up his car phone and called his friend John Wood. "Lose a peregrine?" he asked. "No, why? You see one?" "Yeah, and she's wearing jesses," Perry said. "Where are you?" "I'm at the Delhi Bridge. There's a jest falcon on the bow." "What do you make of that?" "Well, there was a pair of wild falcons nesting there," said John, "but they didn't have jesses. Call Leon Longbridge. He might have heard about a lost falcon. I can't come help you. I've a week of school shows coming up." Frightful dove into a flock of pigeons wheeling out over the river, snatched one in the air, and flew on. Perry watched her as he drove along the riverside highway. When she flew up mountain, he parked, jumped from his car, and kept her in sight until she disappeared. Then he picked up the car phone and dialed Leon Longbridge. His answering machine went on. "This is Perry Leon," he said into the machine. "There's a Jess Peregrine flying around here. John Wood doesn't know anything about her. She's just gone up the river toward Treadwell. I'll drive along that road and ask the residents if they know anyone who has had a falcon around here." He thought a moment and went on. "Would you," ding, turn to page 168, "would you call your boss in Albany and inquire about licensed falconers in this area? I don't know of any except John Wood and me, but there may be others." Frightful was over Sam's mountain, hovering above the one tree, searching for her eyes. The roof of the box prevented her from seeing inside. She flew to a large oak. This was a familiar tree. On its broad limbs sat the wigwam Sam had made for Alice. Alice was not at home. Frightful bobbed her head and twisted it as she stared at the box in the hemlock. Oxy was there. As much as she disliked flying through forest limbs, she must. Hopping from oak to maple to hickory to tulip tree, the pigeon still in her talons, she made her way to the top of the ancient hemlock. "Cack, cack, cack, cack!" Frightful cried the alarm of the peregrine and dove at a monster-like creature in the tree. She did not scare it. It moved closer to Oxy. The bulky thing had a tanned chicken, feathers, head, comb, and all for a head. A burlap bag hung down from it. The head moved into the box. In its beak was food. Oxy snatched it and ate. The monster withdrew and returned with more food. Oxy gulped. The ogre disappeared and Oxy came to the edge of the box. She peered down at this strange mother. The head wiggled as hands stuck food into the chicken's beak. Then the monster mother climbed back to her. Oxy ate. She ate until her crop stuck out, and she couldn't eat no more. The monster mother went down the tree to the ground. Now, if you look at the picture on page 169, you'll see who the new mother is. Looks like Sam to me. Ding, turn to page 170. Sam Gribley took off the burlap bag on which he had affixed Alice's whole tanned chicken skin. He looked for Frightful. "I scared her badly," he said aloud, "but at least her eyes ate. She didn't see my face, so she won't imprint on me." Then he thought about what he had done and chuckled. He spoke aloud. "You had better come back and feed her, Frightful," he said, "or she'll be imprinted on a monster chicken." Sam drove a stick into the ground and drew a line along its shadow. The shadow would move away from the line as the sun moved. He could tell by the distance it traveled how much time had passed. At this time of year, it would move 3½ inches each hour. "The little eyes is good for maybe 3 hours," he said to himself. "If Frightful doesn't come by then, I'll have to be a chicken monster again." He grinned and went inside his tree to write in his journal. "I think I gave Frightful an awful scare," he wrote. The hours passed. The stick shadow moved 10½ inches, 3 hours. Frightful sat motionless on a tree stub above the west branch of the Delaware. She was still afraid, but at the same time pulled to her chick in one tree. The sun shone on her blue-gray shoulders and gleamed in her large eyes. Her feet gripped the dead limb more and more tightly. She could not relax. Hunger finally forced her to move. She flew up the river valley, spotted a rat moving along the side of a farm silo, and took it. She carried it to the courthouse cupola. Tenderly, she plucked a bite and held it in her beak, waiting for an eyes to take it. None did. She swallowed it. Suddenly, Frightful's need to return to her eyes overwhelmed her fears. She spread her long, taper wings and flew toward Oxy, rat in her talons. A soft wind carried her swiftly up the mountainside. She circled the one hemlock. No monster with a chicken head hung in the branch. Frightful landed on the tree. The box and the eyes were gone. "Cree, cree, cree," she cried. "Not the tree," Sam called from below. "The eyes is on the roof of the mill house. I put her out in the open where a peregrine's eyrie should be." Frightful saw Oxy. She sped down, food in her talons, and landed on the floor of the box. Oxy screamed. Sam watched, his fists clenched, his body tensed. Frightful tore off a morsel and fed Oxy. Whew! Sam let out a long, long breath. And you know what? So was Mrs. Enos. That was a lot of reading. Whew! I don't think there's anything until the next chapter, right? Let me make sure. Yep, next chapter we will get back together and keep on reading. So you are going to go open up the assignment. There should be a quickie quiz there for you, 1 through 5, and you got it. B for a bonus. See you all next time.